Hit the lights!
You've discovered the Half Watt Podcast. We want to educate and entertain by tapping into the most trusted source of new technology, the ones installing and innovating it. You, the tradespeople that build from the ground up. Join us as we talk with industry leaders, veteran contractors, and even some young blood.
Welcome aboard. My guest today is Dave Gilson from Terra Byte Technologies. Dave is also an instructor with me for the great state of Oregon. Dave, welcome aboard.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Yeah, appreciate it. Tell me about Terra Byte. What does Terra Byte do?
Terra Byte started in 2003. I call it Limited Energy Solutions as a tagline. I offer all types of aspect of the limited energy systems to my customers.
Nice.
Anywhere from a data wire to a camera to access to fire alarm. And they really like calling the one number. Yeah,
and just having you be the sole source.
Yep.
So you do it all. I've seen you do fire and do you do access control?
Yeah.
And oh wow.
The one thing I won't install is nurse call. I will service it, but I don't like to install it.
Not doing the nurse call. So what got you into this trade? How did you jump into limited energy?
Oddly, I got into the electronics piece of it and was building, the electronic widgets for a company in Oregon, and they had an opening in their internal networking department to hook people up to, at the time, was a mainframe. A dumb terminal coax connection to a mainframe.
Now you're aging yourself. I'm just saying.
I know. I'm
you do you, boo. But
but that's what started me getting into the cabling. And one of the contractors that we had coming in when it was larger projects and we could do ourselves, that would come in and do the additional wiring for us, was looking for somebody to come to work for him.
No kidding.
And I decided that was in 1986. I took that leap.
So that's how long you've been in this industry, really?
Yeah.
And where are you from originally?
Out of Utah.
Out of Utah. At Provo, I think it was?
Yes.
Yeah. So you didn't really work in that industry in Utah. It's all been in Oregon.
Right. My dad was a general contractor. I did that while I was there.
Well, so you've been in the construction trade all your life.
Yes.
But this is the specialty.
Yes.
When did you start teaching?
That was 2002.
Okay.
So that's been a while as well.
Yeah. Now, and for those of you who don't know Dave, he is my boss in the teaching world as well. So Dave is the head instructor for all the limited energy program here in our neck of the woods. Is it just what do we call it? District or?
It's the area.
The area one.
Area one.
Area one. And so I've worked for you since 2013.
You're dating yourself too.
I'm old. I mean, let's be honest with you about that. But so Dave and I have worked together as instructors, and I've even actually worked with you in the field a couple of times when you needed some specialty work done. Yeah. I work up in the great state of Washington, so I can do some work up there for you, which is great. So as far as the limited energy program goes, would you say that Oregon is pretty advanced in that, or are we sort of behind the curve? Or
actually, as I get around the country with some of the positions I hold through the apprenticeship and training, Oregon has one of the largest apprenticeship programs, and probably one of the best is set up and functioning.
Really?
With the equipment, the hands-on pieces that a lot of them just don't have.
So explain that. You mean that? So when you say you go around the country, why are you doing that? I thought you were in Oregon.
As part of the IEC piece of it, I'm getting involved in their apprenticeship and training. In the last couple of years, I've actually been the chairman of their apprenticeship and training. So that gets me involved in going around.
You're the chairman of the whole apprenticeship and training committee for
IEC.
For IEC?
Yeah, national.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big position.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I get to drive the bus.
So you've got a chance to actually look into the programs in other states, and they don't offer this?
No. And those that say they do, when you really start digging into it, it's pieces. It's not a full program. they'll do certain sections of it. The closest that I've seen is Bixie certification through the data side of things. That's the closest I've seen to any kind of apprenticeship program.
But nothing that really includes fire or...
If it is, it's that special training only. They don't do anything. And what I have seen of that is I have yet to see somebody really training full systems.
Really?
It's, the basics, how to wire it, how to set it up. But when it comes to the programming, they're still not doing it.
So in my experience, and of course I just teach a couple of classes for those of you who don't know me, I teach fire alarm systems, a class called specialized controls, and then the basic codes, which is basic trades, which is where the apprentices who just come off the street, or folks that are just getting into the program, I should say, it's their first exposure to teaching, and really in this whole entity that we have. What do you teach?
Well, I started out in the very upfront training with the program, it wasn't called the introduction. There was a first and then a second class getting people involved. Classes were named differently, but it was essentially that introductory class. Data communications is one that I've been teaching a long time, and I've been teaching the National Electrical Code test prep for the students. They have to get a state license here.
Okay.
And so getting them ready for that exam, getting familiar with the code book, it's really all about being able to navigate the code and answer questions in a certain amount of time, or a short period of time, really. So
yeah, it's a time test, isn't it?
It is.
I took it a long time ago. I'm sure you had a JLE to begin with.
Yes.
And I did too. And then I didn't have enough endorsements to just qualify for an LEA, so I had to take another class and all that stuff. But I remember taking the test, and it didn't really have all limited energy questions on
Absolutely not.
So there are just all kinds of
It is.
high voltage
it's
stuff
a navigational of the book, and it doesn't, and it's rightfully so. I mean, It should be, how can I find my way around in that book, regardless of what it is I'm doing. It'd be like a driver's manual or something like that. Can I find my way around in there? What these different sections are, even though I may not be doing it, I should be able to find where it's at.
That's true. So, do we have a lot of folks that take this test and pass it the first time, or do we have a lot of folks that have to take it over and over again, or what's our success rate?
In the past, it was not very good. You could almost judge by the letter grade that they were getting. I could almost put them in a category and tell them this group would not pass the first time. This group may pass.
Really?
This group will pass. And it was really sad to be that predictive of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we implemented some changes in the program, some better materials, resources for them to use. And so the pass rate's gone up. The scores have gone up. Last year, just as an example, we had one class take 15 take the test the same day. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what, for whatever reason, all 15 passed.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So that class would be considered 100% success
Yes,
rate.
100%. But that's a little unusual. There's usually, out of something like that number, we'd probably have 2 or 3 that wouldn't have passed. But that just happened to be one that really stood out.
So I would say with Oregon, with our program here and the way that we're set up, and we're producing all these electricians at a pretty significant rate. I know all the classes I've taught have been relatively full. I haven't had any really light classes in my years of teaching. It seems to me like we're just consistently putting out a lot of folks into the program. So, on some of our discussions, we look at Oregon as this, I don't know, trend-setting state. Are there other states that are trying to adopt what we're doing here, or is this just an Oregon-only thing?
There's a want. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they have that requirement, and hopefully what this is going to, my goal with this with IEC is to bring in that untapped resources of membership. Okay. Right now they're looking at the electrical only side of things. Mm-hmm. And if their contractor membership happens to do some of the low voltage or limited energy work, then they'll, pick up some of that training amongst their chapter currently. But there's no established program. And I think once we establish this program, then I think there's going to be a bigger want from those chapters to bring in new membership then, because then we have something to offer that industry.
Nice. Excellent. Well, that's that makes me happy. Obviously, I like to teach, and I know that you do too. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, and I never thought I would, to be honest.
I didn't. I kind of, in my experience in the military, I thought, well, I would love to teach again, but what I taught in military is nothing like it out here.
Right.
And my own experience in getting in and teaching was as a substitute, and I got involved with the program by going in front of the committee and bringing up one of my apprentices who I didn't feel had ample training. Uh-huh. And they said, well, put up or shut up. If you don't like it, change it. Get in there and do something. Don't, come help us. And so I threw my hat in the ring as a substitute teacher. And then when one of the teachers left, boom, there I was. And I haven't looked back. Like, I just have not looked back.
And the training's improved.
And the training has improved. And it really has, and now one of the things that I've told my apprentices in every class that I've taught is that I don't expect my apprentices to, match my skills or come close to my skills. I expect them to eclipse me. I expect you to crush me.
Yes.
And they have. I work for one of my own students is my manager at my company. And my direct coordinator was my apprentice and one of my students. So, and I know that you own your own company, and you don't really, you don't have anybody that works for you or you work for them, other than your customers. But for a guy who is out there doing this job. I'm really proud of the fact that I work for two of my own students.
Yeah. Well, and as an instructor, that's about all you can, you can give them the best information. And like you say, educate them better than I was educated. Mm-hmm. Sadly, in the field, most of their superiors or trainers or journeymen in the field that are trying to give them the OJT training in the field don't want to teach them everything they know.
Yeah, isn't that strange to reserve?
I don't know if they feel threatened by the new guy coming on the block. I don't know, but you're right. In my mind, I want that person to be much better in the field than I was.
I agree. And I thought it was a military thing, but because I served in the Navy, but you didn't do any military time, and
no.
That's the same. And you have the same exact ideas. So it's not a military, because in the military, if I'm going to sleep and you're on watch, I want to make sure that you know what you're doing, so I can wake up. And I don't wake up dead. That's a terrible way to go. So that's my whole premise. And here I thought I had some sort of exclusive thing going on.
And just the name of the podcast here, the Half Watt Show. I mean, that used to be a derogatory comment to us out there in the field, and it's almost a badge of honor anymore.
I like it.
We're flipping those tables around, because I think the quality of the installer, the journeyman, the apprentice, and the quality of the training have really improved.
I agree.
The installations look cleaner than they ever have. So,
yeah, and that is one thing is that we, since you and I know a lot of the players and a lot of the companies involved, I have noticed that a lot of I'll just pick on Point Monitor. Okay, Point Monitor has I don't even know how many apprentices Mark has cranked out, but I can tell when I show up on a site where they pulled wire. Like, it shows. It's clean, it's neat, it looks good, and all of his apprentices know everything there is to know about pulling wire. They're excellent at it, and so I appreciate the fact that somebody who came in the industry and built a company from scratch, just like you did, built a company and made it happen and employed people and is moving in the industry and having positive results everywhere they go.
Yep.
And that's what it's all about.
That's right.
And having worked for a couple of different contractors in my time, I appreciate when I show up and everything's there. When I was a fire alarm person, when I show up and I find all the record of completions and all the as-built drawings, everything in a box that says, hey, all the records are here.
The stuff that's supposed to be there.
All the stuff that's supposed to be there, just like the code says. Who knows? So, How about with Oregon and the rules here, where the state, mandates how the students are trained and how the apprentices are going to go through? Is that common across the country?
Oh, absolutely not. This is a unique breed here.
Okay.
In other parts of the country, you have either the union training program. Sometimes you'll have an independent training program. Mm-hmm. The problem with those is the OJT hours. Really? So that can create some problems. And then the other is the merit shop, and that's dominated through IEC. In fact, IEC trains they're the largest electrical training contractor in the country. Roughly about
IEC is?
Yeah, roughly
I did not know that.
Yeah, roughly about 90% of the electricians that are trained in the country are trained through an IEC curriculum.
I had no idea. I would have assumed it would have been, the union shops or something.
I know. You would think that the percentage would be way different than that, but it's...
No kidding.
Yeah.
Huh.
Pretty amazing.
That is really amazing. And so with IEC setting up, shop here in Oregon, obviously, I know that we've done a lot of curriculum development, you and I, to sort of standardize some of the books that we're using.
Yes.
And even My Ugly Mug is even on one of the books. Tell us about that, because I know that we have control over some of the content.
Yeah, so I want to kind of lead into that with your question about the uniqueness of Oregon and how that works. In the other states, the IEC program, as I mentioned, was the apprenticeship program to go through. In Oregon, we have the union training and an open shop training. That's the merit shop. But the uniqueness is here in Oregon is you do not have to belong to IEC to receive the training.
Oh, really?
In other states, that's the case if you're going to be trained through the IEC material. This one's set up differently, and we have to take in anybody that wants the training.
So any other group that wants to participate can.
Yes.
And they don't have to go through any of the hoops that.
No, the only caveat is they have to have a training sponsor. They're a contractor sponsoring through the training program, but there's no requirement you have to belong to the IEC program in order to be in the apprenticeship. Huh. A lot of people still do because of the additional benefits, though.
Yeah, I can see that.
And that's the area where I think that is the ripe fruit getting ready to be picked, with bringing in that additional curriculum to open the doors for the other contractors that outside the electrical industry, and getting more into like the fire alarm contractors, the access entry, and bringing all those folks into the association as well.
Okay. I did not know that. This is, and I sat on the committee for a year, the A&T committee for a year, and I'm kind of, it was a little overwhelming because I didn't know exactly what I was doing. But I did get a look at a couple of different states and how they do their program. Georgia was the one that I actually was a little more familiar with. Yep. And the gentleman down there, there's a gentleman for IEC that teaches in Georgia, Mike, who's just fabulous. I thought I was good until I met him. And I'll take a back seat to that. When he talked about limited energy, he took me in his lab and said, well, this is it. This is all I have, and I've only taught it once or twice. Yeah. And it was a bunch of notifier panels on the wall, and there was nothing else. There was no.
That's right.
There was no access control. There was just about 7 or 8 fire panels, and
it's driven by contractor demand. It's not by a complete program. It's just our contractors in this area need this kind of training, so they set it up.
Wow.
So the training that we're getting ready to develop is modularized like that for that, but it'll also be a full apprenticeship program as well.
Nice. Well, I do like having control over the content.
Yes.
Because using someone else's materials, and I've been teaching out of the same book now for years, it would be nice to have content that is more specific, especially when it comes to PLCs. And to me, everything is a PLC. Everything is a programmable logic controller, whether you like it or not. And if you don't know how to program one, in whatever language it needs to be programmed, wake up, because everything's going that way.
That's right. It's all connecting to the internet as well.
All of it's connected to the internet. And we, you and I have talked about power over Ethernet lighting and LED lighting. Can you Can you talk about some of that? I would like people here to know just how big of an industry this is going to become if it isn't already.
So the PoE lighting, I'm most familiar with that one over the LED. LED is, I'm starting to get involved with that.
So there's two different things.
There are. The PoE is more of your traditional white light, can light would be, in an office building or home. They are obviously, though, they're expanding that technology and the styles, but that's what I would compare PoE lighting to be more like. Okay. LED does provide some of that lighting, standard lighting in a room, but they're also doing additional things, signage and that kind of stuff with the LED lighting. So the LED lighting has a little bit of a different application than what the PoE lighting does. I strongly would suggest getting into both, because the customers are going to probably be close to having. They're going to want both in their facility at some point.
That makes sense.
One for the lighting, for your lighting throughout the facility, and one for the show off type. The glitz that goes on.
Well, now, so with PoE, that's a low voltage installed product.
Yes.
So it takes the high, and I'm not trying to knock high voltage folks, but it takes the high voltage, the guy who's the lineman, or the guy who's wiring 277 out of the and it places it squarely in our field.
Yes.
So
if you're a low voltage or limited energy contractor, that's a wide open market that I would strongly suggest. If I wasn't the age of close to retirement, that would be the business avenue I'd be going after.
I thought you were 29.
29 times maybe 3, 2.5 so anyway.
If you weren't already engaged, you would consider working on.
Oh yeah, because the market is wide open and nobody is really jumping into it very heavily because it's an unknown. Everybody doesn't like change, right? Change is hard, but it's opportunity as well.
Yeah. And
the opportunity here is the lighting package. And an electrical side of things, the lighting package is roughly about 60% of the job.
Really?
Now, if I'm going to lose 60% of my product, the job to the PoE, the limited energy folks, I would think you would want to get in and take some training on that.
I would think so too.
And right now, everybody's sitting back waiting, and that's the opportunity still, and it's really been out there for a couple of years.
Yeah, it has, because you and I talked about PoE a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
You went to didn't you go to a place it was in Canada, but wasn't it a Canadian product that you talked about where it was a building or something where they had all this lighting in there and they were able to tell the occupancy, tell me some about that, because I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that was a hotel, a Marriott hotel in Fort Worth, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, that's definitely not Canada.
Not close, just across the border.
Fort Worth, Canada.
But they did a case study on it, the buildup of the building through PoE devices as well as standard electrical. And as they went to build the building, they decided to go with the PoE devices, a lot because of the reduction in power in the end, the less power being drawn. Also more so, I think, for the feedback, the intelligence. It's a data circuit. Even though we may be driving lights, voltage or wattage down that wire to turn a light on and off, there's also the ability to run the data down back and forth on that wire as well.
So just backbones on top of the power.
Yep. And so now we can send intelligence on a lighting circuit.
So the lights in a given area, you said that there were some of them that had sensors to tell, like, the cleaning staff which rooms had been occupied, which rooms had not.
Right.
And so if there had no one, if they cleaned a room one day and they hadn't gone in there, the system told them that, which there's no reason to go in and send anybody in that
with
room.
all that intelligent feedback, you have that ability.
Right.
And before, it's for the most part, before you'd walk in, it might be a motion sensor turn on the light, but there was no feedback to anybody that said, it turned on and people were in there. So the cleaning staff would still go in. And
that's excellent.
So it's a reduction all over. But in the end, they saved almost $600,000 by using the PoE lighting versus traditional lighting, and it was strange. Yeah, there was a huge.
That's a huge difference.
Yeah, but there was also the big dollar amount in the PoE system was in the network infrastructure.
Okay.
I mean, it was a couple $100,000 just in the switches and all that. The PoE switches and the central building of it. That it was a very expensive line item on the bid. Mm-hmm. But when you start seeing the savings overall, it was pretty remarkable in the comparison. At the time, there was a technology hadn't quite come out yet for some of the devices. Mm-hmm. So they decided to install electrical outlets because they weren't sure that technology would be there. That would have added another $200,000 savings to that project.
But had they gone ahead and gone with the design without the outlets, it probably would have saved another couple $100,000. And
about $700,000 on a building. That's a head turner to the builder.
Right, and everything's running Cat 6, so it's like it's easy, and it's plugged, right? It's all plugged. You plug it in the
plug it and play for the most part.
Plug and play.
You have to be concerned about wattage is all.
Right, and I know that they did some studies to make sure that they knew exactly how much power Cat 6 could carry and how many bundles of Cat 6 you could have together, because that was a concern. Because if you had too much, obviously your bends are critical, but if you had a bundle that was too big, it could, the heat. Yeah,
we're creating heat now. Right. Yep.
So for the first time, this 24 gauge wire, isn't that right?
23 for the Cat 6.
23 for Cat 6. So if you're able to carry your lighting on 23 gauge wire versus what you would normally run, right, which is 277.
Yeah.
And then you might be able to fudge a little bit on the neutrals. They have a way of collecting their neutrals different on the high voltage side, where they can use a smaller gauge for stuff. Somebody explained it to me once and my eyes crossed because I'm not a high voltage guy, but interesting.
And we're headed to 90 watts with this PoE, so it's amazing of all the things that we'll be able to drive without having the 110 outlet to give power source to the unit that's out there. So the world's changing, and it's ripe for us to take it away.
It is right. It is. I mean, because we already in Oregon, we already have obviously a fire alarm. We already have Berg and access control. Datacom, cameras, and all the cameras are almost all IP cameras now. There's I don't know anybody's using standard.
You're just services for the most part, replacement and service work, but everything that's going in is IP.
And everything's computer based. I mean, if you're not computer literate at this point, you need to be, because that's just the name. That's
customers
just the
driving that.
Yeah. And so it seems that PoE would be. And then I know that there's another technology with the LEDs that, well, I don't know exactly how to speak to it, but it's where they're doing like Wi-Fi but Li-Fi. It's some sort of where your phone isn't picking up, the 2.5 or 5 gig signals. It's actually
off the lights.
Off of the lights.
Yes.
So everywhere you go, the lights are carrying the data. And of course, the bandwidth would be higher because you're at a much higher frequency.
Technology. That's why you got to have that current books.
I love that. Well, the only other thing I see, in our future is photovoltaics, and that's still being run. The large photovoltaics are still being run by high voltage folks, because you're running them all through microinverters and feeding it back on the grid. And I can appreciate that, but it seems to me that if you wired PoE lighting, you have at least reduced the fire risk, because anything 120, 240, or 277 that arcs is going to cause a fire or real close to it.
Yeah, you're roughly talking 48, 50 volts right in that area for PoE.
Yeah,
and the wattage, goes up to 90 watts roughly. So it's nothing in comparison. So.
And how many appliances do we all have now that plug in? Like even my laptop, the one I'm using now that my company gave me, is powers up off of a USB-C.
Yeah.
Which means I can actually power it off of. Obviously, I need a larger power supply for it, but that's a standard connection now is a USB-C. Well, now we're wiring USB right into the outlets, for crying out loud.
Yep.
So it seems to me that a lot of the equipment that we're actually working is just not even high voltage anymore. It's all low voltage.
No, and you look at your TVs anymore, almost every one of them has the 110 to some kind of a DC voltage adapter in line with it. And that's where we're going to be able to, like I say, large screen TVs, display TVs will be able to drive through PoE.
That's awesome.
Laptops.
And it is all right in our wheelhouse.
It is.
So by training all these electricians that we've trained over the years, and they're all out there, and obviously a lot of them are doing their own companies or are working for folks that are entrepreneurs. I mean, I think that if there was somebody willing to pick up that PoE flag and run with it, I think I would love to hear how well it went. I mean, I would imagine a business would explode in the lighting end of it. I'm in the same boat you are. I'm too old to pick up new things. I'd rather do this or something. I use my mouth. I'm good at that. All right. Well, welcome back. So what we left off with was talking about PoE and I think we had just hit the devices and stuff like that on PoE. Let me ask you about this. What is the Internet of Things?
It is in pretty much anything that's connected to the internet. It's a buzzword that they use, or an acronym they're using that's
IoT.
IoT, devices that connect to the internet, and they're calling that the Internet of Things.
Okay, so you and I were talking in the break that in 2019 they had 10 billion,
roughly 10 billion devices connected to the Internet of Things.
And what do they think if COVID hadn't put the damper on everybody's life for a couple of years? Where do they think they were going to be in 2025?
That curve was tenfold. They expected 100 billion devices to be connected.
100 billion devices.
You can't create the demand or fill the demand of qualified people to install that. This is the construction industry to be in.
So that's
here.
That's the hole that we're trying to fill.
Yep.
And it's moving in 6 years. It's tenfold.
Tenfold in 6 years.
And so that puts us as limited energy technicians squarely in the right industry.
Yes.
Flat out.
Yes.
Yeah, and I tell my students the same thing. I said whether you knew it or not, you stumbled into a fantastic career field because this will always pan out. And you were saying that folks are retiring faster than we can fill those positions. So you've got two things happening, right? You've got folks retiring that you have to backfill those positions. You still have technology that isn't changing that needs to be. And I'm a fire alarm guy, so I know all about old technology there. But then you've also got this expansion and this need to fill it, and you're saying it's basically almost an impossible task.
It is. I mean, you're right. I mean, we look back at what we were training to in the past was, a dozen type of low voltage limited energy systems, and technology is that's a small number anymore. So many other devices and technologies increased out there. So you have opportunities to go off and do other things outside of that what was the normal groove. And so I'm still not, even though we're producing people, they may be grabbing that new technology and we're not backfilling where we needed to backfill.
Right.
So I don't think we'll ever get there. So that just means that the opportunities, the growth, are they're here and here to stay for a long time.
Yeah, I know that I have told my my students that, and I'm sure you do the same thing. But we go around the class and we all introduce ourselves, and I talk about who I am, where I came from, and where were you? What did you do before here? I have a lot of students who have had other careers careers. Like they've gone to college. I've had a couple of students with a master's degree, and one PhD come through, but a bunch of folks with masters and a bunch of folks with bachelors, and they're not working in the field they trained in. So here and I'm certainly not knocking you having a bachelor's degree. Please don't. Please don't let me down like a rabid animal and take me out of my misery. But you spend all that time in college and you pay all that money and you get all that debt, and then you will wind up coming out working in a trade where I've had a couple of students that are like 19, they just got out of high school, and those are the ones I go, ring, ring, ring. Look, stay in this industry. Don't get out, right? Just keep plugging along. Get your 401ks filled up. Make sure that you've set yourself up, because you're in a good position in 30 years to be done. Yep. Like you could literally retire if you played your cards right. Right. And those of us who are over the hill, me included, we're still out here working, right?
Yep.
But had I been 19 and known, if I didn't known then what I know now, I really seriously would be driving a Corvette and retired is where I would be, right? As I'm eyeballing that Stingray of yours. So I think that it's imperative for people to know that. Yeah. That you can get a college degree, and I super appreciate that, because that may be your passion, but if you need to come and work in a trade, that's okay too.
Well, and I think where some of the issue has been with college is they don't investigate the job once they have the degree.
Really?
I don't think the job is investigated well enough up front.
Okay.
And nothing. Colleges, I mean, they're wonderful, but they will train you in whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
They don't counsel you well enough to say there's a job in the end when you get done with that training.
Right. Or maybe there's only two positions.
Or there's only two jobs out there.
There's two jobs like that.
Yeah, great, that's your passion, but there's not much employment out there in that industry. Where through the trades, you're pretty much sponsored to go into that training program. So you pretty much have the job before you get in. Or as you get in, you have that job. So that isn't there. That issue isn't there. And if you were to take let's say you take that college route and go for the 4-year degree, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's about roughly an $80,000 the average college debt you walk away with.
Yeah.
And if I just come out of college, I'm probably not going to be able to afford a good payment on that loan. Mm-hmm. So I'm probably paying the minimum for a long time. And if you take that and amortize that out, even if you're getting that $85, $90 an hour job, working through the trades, it's amazing how long you go before the two lines cross.
Oh, I get it. I see what you're saying. Yeah. So if you and of course a lot of employers will help do tuition reimbursement.
Yes.
Here in our program. So you could conceivably get tuition reimbursement, right? Get your books reimbursed while you're working. Come out of it 3 years later with an LEA, if that's what you're going for, and
making $65,000 a year right now.
$65,000 a year, which I think is a much better. I think it's a much better deal.
Yes.
I mean, I having been surrounded by electricians now since I've been out of the military, I don't know any other way. I don't know how many people I've talked to and coaxed into the program or, helped encourage to be a part of it, a lot.
Yeah.
And I make it a point on every class I've ever taught to give my number out. Everybody knows it, even when I change jobs, like I have this recently, to call me if they got issues, and I will do my best to help you help you get unvapor locked if you're stuck on something. I had a client one time. I had a kid call me one time. He was really stuck on a duct detector. And duct detectors are terrible to wire. If you don't understand conventional duct detectors, they're terrible. If you got 3 or 4, you've got to wire them all, the alarm contacts first, and then double back through the trouble contacts. And I've explained this and just said, just pull the wire, I'll do it.
Sometimes it's easier.
Let's make my life easier. Step aside.
Well, and I hope that the electricians start to embrace more of this type of technology, because it is becoming a low voltage or limited energy world.
It is.
Fast.
It is. Now, the folks that work with me, the high voltage guys that work with me, have been doing exclusively fire wiring for us. Well, since I had a 16-year hiatus from that employer, one of the guys has been there the whole time. So he was an apprentice when I was there before, and now he's running the show. And phenomenal wire. Like hands down, these guys are top notch.
Good. But
they're working in the low voltage world as high voltage people. And then they have the advantage of they can do it all right on site. So if you need 120, they can drop it, and then they can do all the low voltage stuff too. It's a rarity. I can probably count on two hands the number of high voltage folks I've run into who are phenomenal at fire and everything else.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I certainly don't begrudge them, because I did have a student the other day ask me if I could do it again, would I be a high voltage person? And I said no.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
That stuff will kill you.
First off, I didn't want to be swept into a dustpan at the end of the day. And I have had, joke with high voltage folks at work, especially when they're suiting up to go into medium voltage. And I'm come scooting by going, oof, well, I'm going to go work at a door magnet. I hope everything goes okay. If I hear a big boom, I know it didn't. But, it's a matter of choice for me. I like the technology, and I like what I work on, and I like the safety aspect of it in my own world.
Yep.
I know I'm going to come home at night.
Yep.
And that's just that. Maybe I'm just a wimp. I don't know.
No,
that's just me.
Well, and there's more technology. There's constant learning in the limited energy industry as well. On the electrical side, there's code changes, and the product doesn't change.
I didn't find about that. It doesn't change that much.
The technology doesn't change a lot to it. They get some features that'll update some features and stuff in them, but the overall technology.
And they did go from red wire nuts to tan.
Yeah,
right.
They're getting there. I mean, and they are making some, because of the threat of the PoE. They are starting to bring some intelligence into their lights now, but it's a dual circuit.
Yeah.
So I'm concerned. And I think they're playing catch up.
I think you're right.
So
I think you're right.
We'll see how this plays out.
But I do enjoy I enjoy what I do. I enjoy the technological aspect of it. I was writing some. I work on simplex systems, so I was writing some code on an old simplex panel today, and you're dealing with old logic, because these are old 4100 pluses that I was writing on, and you have to go back and think, okay. Well,
you were programming in zeros and ones?
No, it wasn't that old. No, a little bit more advanced than that. But it's you really have to go back with ladder logic and write your equations out, how you're gonna work it, and then look at the syntax as what's in how it's written, who put it together, and thankfully the predecessors that I had working on my systems standardized a lot of what they wrote. And then I was able to fit my code in there and figure it out. But now you got to go test it. Like everything you put in there, you got to make sure it's going to work. Yep. And when you're dealing with a life safety system, those are people's lives on the line.
It's got to work.
It's got to work every time. It's got to work without fail.
Yep.
Part of the reason that I do fire, and that I've always loved fire, and I don't want to go into a long rant about it, but I always have an assistant troubleshooting with me. I've got this machine. Unlike other technology I've worked on, this thing's constantly telling me what's right and what's wrong.
Yep.
Constantly going, hey, man, you've opened, what are you doing here? You've got an open circuit. I'm not seeing this. And so I've explained that to my students going like, this thing's helping you. Other technology doesn't do that. It just doesn't work. And you're beating your head against the wall. My technology goes, I don't work, and this is why I don't work.
This is what my problem appears to be.
I have systems that have training wheels. I don't know what you have, but mine helps me. We were talking about curriculum, and I wanted to take some time to to re-hit that. Okay, because I know that I've worked diligently on the specialized controls curriculum piece. Like, and I wanted to really sit down and write that. Like, I totes want to sit down and write all of what it takes to do that. And it turns out that I can be an okay electrician and an okay writer, but doing both of them at the same time.
Huh. Yes.
So
yes.
you wrote, did you not write a textbook?
I did.
How'd that work out for you?
Well, let's say overall, I'm pleased with the way it turned out. I thought I was going to get it done in about 4 months, not 2 years.
so your timelines are off.
Oh, and it's you end up finding that, it's you when you start thinking about it, you got all this. I got all this extra time I'd be able to do on the weekend. I can do this a couple hours a night on these nights, and you start figuring out, I got a lot of time I can do this, and reality starts to hit, and there's something that comes up on a weekend day, you got something else you're supposed to have done, and that time available just shrinks.
Do you get the stink eye from your better half looking at you going, why are you?
Not too much, because she knows the passion I have for making the industry better.
Okay. Then maybe she can talk to your
wife. Well, too much. There is times that too much. I think the issue is I could write all the time. I can sit down and write all the time, but you can't mix that and going to work, and
you can't have that needs to be your job.
It needs to be your job. Yeah, and so curriculum development to me is something like now where we're writing the outline of what we want and then handing it over to a technical writer who can actually fill it out, and then we can edit it and go back and say, you hit it here and you didn't hit it there. I think that's a good way to go. I just wish I could crank these things out faster.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a way of getting you to be a writer without having to do the writing. All your ideas get put in there. You can be the editor of it, the technical editor of it. So, you're not really punching in the keypad in the words, but overall, it's the content that you're after.
Which is the key. Yeah. And honestly, I've looked at my writing, my technical writing, and then I've looked at technical writers and said, well, I really missed the mark there. And it's not as easy as I thought it was.
No,
I can technically write a page out of this is how you do whatever. But when you're going to write 30 or 50 or 100 pages of that, you need to really be good at it, and you need to be efficient.
Yep. And
you need to watch what your tenses are. That's another thing is when I went to write, I was like, my tenses are all over the place. I'm talking, and you got to go back to college or back to, school to really remember is just exactly what I'm trying to do here.
And fortunately, we have an editor in place as well from an English editing, the grammar, I should say, not English, but the grammar editing of it. And
she's scary good, by the way.
She is.
She's scary good.
And thank goodness, because in doing some of that writing, I make a lot of assumptions something. And from the brand new person, that's not necessarily the case, and she catches that.
Yeah, I noticed that too, because the piece I wrote for her, she was like, it was okay. And I was like, oh, where was it failing at? And man, it was like, she was spot on.
Yes, she is.
She was spot on.
Yep.
And she's got a degree from, I think it's a master's from Johns Hopkins.
I think so, yeah.
Johns Hopkins, which I thought it was, as soon as she said Johns Hopkins, I went, well, it's a medical place, isn't it? Like an idiot, right? Like that's all that comes out of Johns Hopkins or other doctors. But yeah, she's really a talent. So nice.
So yeah, that's nice, because currently with the program, we have to have a core.
Okay.
To register the program in apprenticeship with the state, there has to be an established core curriculum. And we've been utilizing another particular party's core curriculum, which didn't get updated very often.
Right, because one of the books I teach from is that very old.
Yeah.
And I have to tell my students that, okay, this is pull start because it hasn't been updated in a while, that kind of a thing.
So a couple of versions ago, I got involved to try and help get the technology, enough content in there to be able to instruct a class on. And then I got involved this last go around as well with them and help update to the current technology. It's much better than it's ever been. but that's their horse.
Mm-hmm.
We got our own horse that we're trying to do now. And I think that's the right way, is to create our own content material for the program that we have 100% control over.
I agree.
Changes, technology, code updates, all of that stuff can be done as needed rather than waiting that technological eternity for the other publisher at their mercy to update their content. And the last one was 8 years. And 8 years in this industry is
that's
forever.
A lifetime. That's a lifetime. It really, really is in this industry. And now the exception would be fire, which moves at a glacial pace. And I understand that.
Yep.
I mean, and we all in the fire monkeys all know that. I mean, I have to be proficient in something that is built in the 80s.
Sure, but you're still seeing new technology come in. It's creeping in,
It's creeping in. And I think the only reason why we don't see it faster in the fire alarm world is it's all got to be UL listed. And so the manufacturers are not going to UL list something unless they know they've got a product that's going to hit it because of all the cost of the UL testing.
100% of the time.
100% of the time. And of course, some manufacturers face plant, some manufacturers don't. And so, but you know what you wind up seeing in the fire industry, and that may be another reason why I kind of like it is that it does move slower. Where if I look at IP cameras, that technology and Berg technology is just so well. I tell you, the other one is home automation, what Jesse's doing, and with Myriad and stuff like that. Jesse was the only instructor I ever knew who was teaching this and really worked in that field. And I've had, I think, 3 students in the last 2 classes who are also in that field that are in parallel companies doing that. And that is everything from running your drapes up and down in your McMansion to completely running the whole show.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff that I have seen Jesse show me on the iPad is jaw-dropping. And here I'm back here clanking rocks going, oh, the wire the Class A for the fire system. And he's going, look, man, well, I can log in here and control everything in this house, until we turn it over to the client. This is everything. I find it was astounding. It was even when he set up this surround sound, it was 11.3. I don't know what 11.3 is. It sounds pretty bad. I mean, bad as in good. So I stepped into his lab to watch a video of Unbroken, a piece of the movie Unbroken. And the one scene that he was showing was where the Bombay doors wouldn't come up on the B-24 and the navigators are beating him with his, trying to get the doors to close, and a Japanese fighter takes a shot at him, and the bullet whizzes right past the guy. And I thought I had PTSD at the end of that. I mean, the bullet went right in front of me. I could hear it. And Jesse's laughing because, here I'm, the hell do I know? The fire monkey, good. Sometimes a wire smoke attacker. But he really, I mean, that is one technology that I can see advancing super fast.
Well, and some of the stuff when you stick it in, it's pretty much, it's almost out of date when you installed it.
That's crazy. But I do know when I go through like Costco and I see all of these components, and some of that stuff is I guess it interfaces. I don't even know the technology names. That's how little of it I know.
The integration between them and all that. But careful buying products from places
that may not integrate the way you think. That's true.
Longevity.
Yeah.
You get what you pay for.
I just find that what he was doing, I thought, was really unique years ago before he started teaching with us. And now it's commonplace. Yep. Like it's everybody, and not everybody's doing it, but there's more and more and more moving to that. And if you think about it, I think COVID probably did that part of the industry more good than harm.
Yeah.
because if you can go out to the movies, you can absolutely put in a OLED TV and build it up yourself.
Well, and I'm seeing more of this programming to be not so restrictive.
Oh, really?
By a manufacturer brand or something like that. The door pretty much, some of the stuff you create the scenarios. You build what it is you want the system to do. You're not stuck to drop down menu choices.
Yeah.
Like if you want that feature, you create it and then point to that feature.
Huh. That's cool.
It's really opening the doors, which programming, you're going to have to be almost an IT person along with this anymore. I
don't disagree with that. I know that in my last company, I worked with a gentleman who was our IT professional, and he says, "Oh, I'm a hobbyist on the side." Well, what's your hobby? What do you do? And he would bring in like an Arduino, and he would program it, do all kinds of stuff, or one of these little computers, or a Pi or something like that, a Raspberry Pi. And he was doing stuff that was jaw dropping. It was jaw dropping. And at one point we needed a way to take information out of an EST3 Fire panel, move it over to SMS texting, and send it out. And he built the machine to do that.
Wow.
And it worked. It wasn't just like he built it, tweaked it, worked it, which means he had it understand the language that the EST was talking in, which was like a C++ derivative. And then the output, pick it up with this Arduino, flip it over to SMS. And he bought the SMS SIM card, the chips, the right chipsets and the right SIM cards to piece it all together so they could use the thing. And it came out in a box that he put together. It took him a couple months. This guy drove tanks in the Marine Corps. So we're not, if you can go in the Marines, drive a tank, walk out, be an IT professional, which he is. Besides that, he's excellent with Windows products as well. And then at home, build Arduinos and make these things. And his current project, I was involved in it for a little while, but it was a search and rescue aircraft, UAV.
Huh.
Yeah, vertical launch. Like, just goes up and flies, and it's got a IR sensor and the whole 9 yards. I just didn't have the time for participating in it, so I had to kind of back out.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so you can see where now, when I was a kid, we were still doing through the whole electronics and piecing together old stuff. And now these folks are putting together small subsystems to make a complete assembly of some sort. And I think that's exactly what's going on with Jesse and this home automation technology. Unbelievable.
Yep. What an exciting industry.
What a place to be. I see it. I see the future is very bright for us. I really, really do. Yep. And with Oregon, with all the rules that we have to jump through with the state of Oregon, does the state do they even realize what they have created here? That they've created something that really a lot of other places just don't have?
I don't think they know. I really don't. I think they've created for the revenue, and I don't really I don't think they realize that this in other states could take off like it does. So far, I don't know. Very, very few states have a state license in this industry, in our industry. On the electrical side,
I did not know that.
On the electrical side, yeah, it's pretty much almost every state requires it. Some still don't, but somebody on the company still has to be licensed. So,
but California doesn't require a license for this?
For this, no.
No kidding.
I mean, they push for it, but at this point, no.
Man, you'd think they would be one of the first to adopt something like that. I know Washington does because I'm obviously licensed up there.
And there's pushes. There's other training associations that are getting into California trying to push for it. So, yeah, I would expect at some point it does. But you've seen it as well when companies get these national contracts. They fly through here, and they're in and out in the day, and you come behind and see the work that they've done. Yep. You can tell they weren't licensed individuals.
You can tell that they didn't know what they were doing. In my industry, we call them trunk slammers. But we followed behind a couple of trunk slammers in my last company that simple things like you'd push reset and it wouldn't reset. Yeah. You had to, and my techs are going, well, gee, you didn't hit it with resettable 24. Let me help you out with that. Those kind of things. I know that with Washington, we wanted to, I know that I'm qualified to teach up there. I think you are too. Your resume was accepted. Mine was too. So we could at some point teach for the ELS 6 program up there. And in my experience in Washington has been that they're much more restrictive in their licensing and their continuing ed.
Yes.
Much more than Oregon. You got to jump through a lot of hoops to get a license in Oregon, and once you do, your continuing ed requirements are pretty low.
Yep.
Where in Washington, you have to jump through all these hoops to get your license. Then you got to do a lot of continuing ed, and then that's still not enough. Like in Vancouver, where you have to really get more. You have to get their special endorsements to do work up in there. So Ann and I set the level 2.
Yep.
So I find that our friends to the north, even in their jurisdictional requirements, like the state fire marshal up there, is actually ahead of the curve. And Oregon, the state fire marshal here, have fully admitted that the way that Washington is comprehensively looking at a building, for example, fire alarm systems, fire dampers, fire smoke dampers, door closings correctly, seals on the doors, seals and penetrations on firewalls, everything. They're looking at everything. And the state fire marshal of Oregon says that's where we need to be. That's in the same exact place.
Yep, they're not.
No, but I've always told my students that if you're going to be in an industry that is well regulated, because even if the economy does happen to turn south, they still have to have, us out there doing our work.
That's right.
Yeah. So let me close out. Okay. Well, I certainly appreciate you spending some time with me today.
Oh,
also.
My pleasure.
And,
hope I get to come back sometime and talk more.
I would love to have you back. I would love to have you back.
This is good talks, and you and I got a lot of stories and a lot more anyway. So
we could tell some pretty raucous stories. I'm afraid that there might be a lot of bleeping.
They might. I don't think they have enough hard drive space here we could sit here and chat for hours. So.
I would like that though. Well, you're invited back anytime, Dave.
My pleasure. I'd love to come back. So.
And, well, thank you for being a part of the show.
All right. I hope this is very successful.
Me too.
Thanks.